For decades, you've been told that renting is throwing your money away, while buying a home is the ultimate sign of financial maturity. We're taught that a monthly rent check simply burns cash into thin air, while a mortgage payment acts as a forced savings account that builds real, lasting wealth. But what if the math everyone uses to justify buying a house is fundamentally incomplete? What if buying a home under the wrong conditions actually destroys more wealth than renting ever could? The truth is, both options burn money every single month. They just do it in completely different ways. And if you don't understand the hidden math behind unrecoverable costs, you might be making a 30-year mistake that severely cripples your financial freedom.
Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room, the emotional pull of real estate. Society treats home ownership as a cultural rite of passage. Your parents tell you to buy, your bank tells you to buy. And every personal finance guru on television insists that renting is just paying someone else's mortgage. On the surface, the logic seems airtight. If you pay $2,000 a month in rent, at the end of 10 years, you've handed over $240,000 to a landlord, and you have zero equity to show for it. If you put that same $2,000 toward a mortgage, you end up with a tangible asset, piece of property that you own.
It sounds simple, logical, and convincing, but it relies on a massive visual trick. It compares a single unrecoverable cost on the renter's side against a clean, idealized version of home ownership where every single dollar spent builds equity. In reality, home ownership is loaded with invisible, unrecoverable expenses that never build a single penny of equity. When you buy a home, you aren't just paying down a loan, you're taking on a complex web of interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and lost opportunities. And once you strip away the emotion and look at how the dollars actually flow, the financial winner isn't nearly as clear as people think. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They confuse having a large asset with building actual net worth. To compare renting and buying fairly, we have to look at unrecoverable costs, money that leaves your pocket and never comes back under any circumstances. Rent is obviously an unrecoverable cost. You pay your landlord, you get a place to live for 30 days, and that money is gone forever. Nobody disputes this. Where the narrative breaks down is the assumption that buying has no unrecoverable costs. In reality, buying a home comes with at least 4 massive sinks of unrecoverable money: mortgage interest, property taxes, homeowners insurance, and ongoing maintenance.
Let's start with mortgage interest. When you take out a standard 30-year mortgage, you aren't mostly paying off your house for the first decade. You're mostly paying the bank for the privilege of borrowing their money. On a $400,000 home with a 20% down payment, borrowing $320,000 at a 6% interest rate means your initial monthly payment for principal and interest is roughly $1,900. Out of that first payment, nearly $1,600 goes straight to interest. That is unrecoverable money. It doesn't build equity. It doesn't buy you a square foot of drywall. It vanishes straight into the bank's profit margin, just like rent vanishes into a landlord's bank account.
Then comes property taxes. Depending on where you live in the United States or Canada, you'll pay anywhere from 1% to nearly 3% of your home's assessed value every year to the government. On that $400,000 home, a 2% tax rate means $8,000 a year, over $600 a month, paid purely for the right to keep occupying your own property. If you stop paying it, the government takes your house. That money is gone forever. Next, factor in homeowners insurance and potential home association fees. Insurance on a primary residence easily runs $1,500 to $3,000 a year, and association fees can easily add another $200 to $400 every month. Neither of those expenses builds equity.
Finally, there's the cost of keeping the structure standing, maintenance and repairs. The general rule of thumb in real estate is that a home costs between 1% and 2% of its value per year just to maintain. Roofs leak, heating systems break, foundations settle, and appliances wear out. On a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 to $8,000 a year in routine upkeep.
When you sum up interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance on that $400,000 home, your unrecoverable cost of owning can easily exceed $2,000 every single month. In other words, you could be burning just as much money owning that home as someone paying $2,000 in monthly rent.
So why does almost everyone insist that buying always wins? In a moment, we'll look at the single biggest wealth variable that almost every home buyer forgets to calculate, and it's not the mortgage rate. The missing link in almost every rent versus buy calculation is opportunity cost. Money can only be in one place at one time. When you decide to buy a house, you don't just sign up for monthly payments, you have to write a massive check up front. To buy that $400,000 house with a traditional 20% down payment, you need $80,000 in cash. Add in closing costs, lender fees, inspections, and title insurance, and you're likely writing a check for roughly $95,000 before you even get the keys.
That $95,000 is now locked inside the walls of your home. It isn't earning interest. It isn't collecting stock dividends, and it isn't compounding in a global market index. It is trapped in illiquid home equity. Now let's look at what happens if a renter takes that same $95,000 and invests it wisely instead. Historical data shows that a broad stock market index fund, like one tracking the S&P 500, has averaged a long-term nominal return of around 10% per year before inflation. Even if we take a conservative approach and assume an 8% annual return, $95,000 left untouched in an index fund compounds to more than $200,000 in 10 years and over $440,000 in 20 years. That growth happens without you ever lifting a hammer, replacing a water heater, or paying property taxes on it. It's passive compounding in its purest form. When a buyer puts their capital into a house, they give up that alternative compounding machine entirely. And that brings us to an incredible paradox that trips up millions of home buyers. What happens when your rent is actually lower than your total monthly cost of owning?
In many major metropolitan markets, renting a specific property costs significantly less each month than buying that exact same property with today's interest rates. If owning a home costs $3,000 a month all in, but renting an equivalent home costs $2,200, the renter has an extra $800 in cash flow every single month. If that renter takes that $800 monthly difference and invests it consistently into the stock market alongside their preserved down payment, the wealth creation math shifts dramatically. Yet most people ignore this entirely because they treat the extra money saved by renting as free spending cash rather than investment capital. Renting only builds superior wealth if the renter actually discipline invests the difference. If a renter spends that extra cash on vacations and eating out, homeownership will almost always win by default, simply because the mortgage forced them to save something. But what if we look at what actually happens over a full 30-year mortgage cycle?
To understand why homeownership takes so long to generate actual wealth, you have to look closely at how a mortgage loan is structured. Banks don't structure mortgages to help you build equity quickly. They structure them to collect their interest up front while their financial risk is at its highest. This mechanism is called amortization. During the first 5 years of a 30-year mortgage, roughly 75 to 80% of every single monthly payment you make goes exclusively toward interest. Out of a $2,000 monthly principal and interest payment, only $400 or $500 might actually reduce your loan balance. The remaining $1,500 disappears instantly into the bank's revenue column. By year 10, you are still paying more in interest each month than you are putting toward your principal balance. It usually takes 15 to 18 years of continuous monthly payments before your principal payment finally overtakes your interest payment.
This creates a serious problem for the average homeowner. The typical American or Canadian family moves every 7 to 10 years. If you buy a house, pay a mortgage for 7 years, and then sell,
you have spent nearly a decade paying almost exclusively interest, property taxes, and maintenance. When you finally sell the house after 7 years, you encounter another massive set of unrecoverable costs, transaction fees. Real estate agents typically charge 5 to 6% of the total sale price in commissions. Add in closing costs, transfer taxes, home staging, and seller concessions, and it usually costs around 8 to 10% of the home's total price just to sell it. If your $400,000 house appreciated to $480,000 over 7 years, you might feel like you made an $80,000 profit. But after paying $38,000 in selling fees, subtracting $80,000 in interest paid over 7 years, and factoring in property taxes and maintenance, your actual net return on investment might be zero or even negative. You didn't build wealth, you simply paid a bank and a real estate broker for the privilege of living in that building. And this leads to the central myth that drives the entire housing market, the idea that housing prices always skyrocket over time. We've all heard stories of someone's grandparent buying a house in 1975 for $40,000 and selling it today for $800,000. It sounds like an astonishing fortune, but when you apply actual financial math to those numbers, the reality looks very different. Historically, over the last century, residential real estate in the United States has appreciated at an average rate of roughly 3 to 4% annually, just slightly above the long-term rate of inflation. Nobel Prize-winning economist Robert Shiller compiled data on U.S. home prices going back to 1890 and found that after adjusting for inflation and maintenance, the real price of American housing was practically flat for nearly a century. Most of the massive price jumps people talk about are simply the result of overall inflation and decades of accumulated maintenance costs disguised as profit.
If you buy a house for $300,000 and spend $100,000 over 20 years, updating the kitchen, replacing the roof, and fixing the plumbing, selling it for $450,000 isn't a $150,000 gain. Your net profit is $50,000 before adjusting for inflation, property taxes, and interest. Compare that to the broader financial markets. While real estate historically appreciates at around 3 to 4% annually, a diversified portfolio of major companies historically yields around 7 to 10% annually over long periods. Because of the power of compound interest, that difference in annual return is monumental. A dollar invested at 3% doubles in roughly 24 years. A dollar invested at 8% doubles in roughly 9 years. Over a 30-year time frame, capital invested in the broad market turns into a compound mountain of wealth that dwarfs typical residential real estate appreciation, unless you leverage heavily.
Leverage is the one secret weapon of real estate. When you put 20% down on a house, you control 100% of the asset. If the house goes up in value by 5%, your return isn't 5% on your down payment, it's 25% because you gain 5% on the bank's money too. Leverage amplifies gains tremendously on the way up. However, leverage is a double-edged sword that cuts both ways. If house prices drop or stay flat, leverage amplifies your losses just as fast. Furthermore, you are paying interest on that borrowed money every single day. If your appreciation rate doesn't beat your mortgage interest rate plus your ongoing unrecoverable costs, leverage actually works against you, compounding your drag on net worth over time. Which brings us to the ultimate question. If the math is so nuanced, how do you decide what's right for your personal situation? The debate between renting and buying isn't about finding a single universal truth that applies to every human being. It's about matching the financial mechanics to your personal reality. Neither option is inherently superior, both are simply financial tools designed for different circumstances. Buying a home makes immense financial sense when specific criteria are met.
First, you plan to stay in the exact same location for at least 7 to 10 years. A long time horizon allows you to amortize those massive upfront buying and selling transaction costs over a decade or more, giving your property time to recover from temporary market dips. Second, the total monthly cost of owning that property, including mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, is roughly equal to or lower than the cost of renting a similar home in your market. Third, you value stability, control over your living space, and forced savings more than maximum flexibility and liquid wealth creation. For millions of people, a mortgage acts as a mandatory savings plan that forces them to build equity they would otherwise spend on lifestyle inflation. If you know you lack the self-discipline to take extra monthly cash and invest it in index funds every single month without fail, buying a home is often the safest path to building wealth by default. On the flip side, renting makes overwhelming financial sense under a completely different set of conditions. Renting is superior if you value geographical and career mobility. The ability to move across the country for a 20% pay raise without worrying about selling a house or breaking a mortgage can accelerate your primary income far faster than real estate equity ever could. Renting is also the smarter move if you live in a high cost of living market, where buying costs significantly more per month than renting the exact same space. By renting for less, keeping your capital liquid, and diligently investing the difference between rent and ownership costs into low-cost market index funds, you can build a highly liquid, low-maintenance fortune that outpaces home equity over time. Finally, renting makes sense if you want to keep your financial life simple and free of unpredictable liabilities. As a renter, your rent is the maximum amount you will pay for housing in any given month. As a homeowner, your mortgage is the minimum amount you will pay every month. Any broken pipe or failing roof is an unexpected addition to that bill. At the end of the day, a home is primarily a consumption item that provides shelter and stability, not a magical wealth machine that automatically guarantees financial independence. The belief that renting is always burning cash while buying is always building wealth is a myth created by simplified math and cultural conditioning. When you evaluate housing through the lens of unrecoverable costs, opportunity costs, and long-term capital efficiency, the decision stops being an emotional milestone and becomes what it was always supposed to be: a calculated personal finance decision based on numbers, timeframes, and lifestyle priorities. Look at the real math in your local market, evaluate your personal discipline, and choose the strategy that serves your long-term goals, not the one society tells you to follow. If this video helped you look at housing and money through a clearer, more logical lens, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below letting us know where you stand. Are you team renting or team buying in today's market? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.